squash. Okay. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Thomas?
Well, just to say thank you to the Rappahannock Area Health Department for doing the COVID testing at Second Mount Zion Friday.
Okay.
I came back negative.
Did they do antibodies or just active? Just the active test. Okay. Mrs. Long? And I have none, so we will move on to. Oh, Mr. Black. I'm used to looking down the table at you.
Hey, Mr. Seeley, good evening. I just have a couple actually. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay. I forgot to mention at the last meeting, want to congratulate the Habitat for Humanity, Caroline County, for the new program that they have that's going to be helping out, the grant that they have that's going to be helping out teachers and public safety. So I think we need to get Mr. Tickle into one of our board meetings to explain the program. I think he's also doing a home, starting now a home kind of renovation program as well. So it'd be nice for him to come to us to explain what's going on there. I think he wants to do that. The second comment I have, which will go along with some of the stuff that goes on tonight. One of the things over the last couple of weeks that we've been seeing is I think there's been some miscommunication, especially between us and the school board about what's happening. And so, Mr. Seeley, if you don't mind, tonight after the meeting, if we could put out a letter from the chairman, just kind of explaining what the decision was of the board and why we made those decisions, that would be very helpful to put on the county website.
Okay.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Hearing none other, we will move on to our current agenda item number 1. And I guess, Mr. Cully, are you going to lead that off for us?
Good evening, members. Yes, sir. We have kind of 3 items under tab 1, resolution appropriating funds for the FY 2021 school budget. I've included 2. The schools, as you see down further, request for supplemental appropriation. See the attached information regarding Anthem funds previously approved of $300,000. Well, they've already included that $300,000 in their proposed resolution. So the first one in your packet, if you turn to it, it's on the letterhead, R13-20 is the resolution number. In this one, I prepared and removed that $300,000 from the revenue. So you'll see local revenues, $426,000. And if you flip over to the school one, just move over one page, you'll see $726,000. That's where that $300,000 Anthem has already been included in what the school board adopted. What I did was, when you get over to expenditures, I created a new line, balance to available revenue adjustment, and subtracted $300,000 from the expenditures, and that I didn't know where to take that from because the total revenues are $44,796,635, which is what I proposed in the budget that you saw and adopted when you adopted the county side and the general fund transfer to schools. So in order to sort of wash that out so the math works on the expense side, I've created that $300,000 reduction. So that is the first item of those, if you want to take those in order.
We actually, just so everybody's clear, we actually have 2 resolution of funds for schools. One that they sent to us, and let me digress a little. We said we were going to level fund, which means they would get the same amount of money this year as last year.
Correct.
And that's what we adopted at our last meeting, was level funding for schools, correct?
Correct. They've always asked for this $300,000 in each of their requests. I kept zeroing it out because there are no Anthem funds. We did the $300,000 in FY19 and then we balanced out, zeroed out the Anthem funds in FY20, which was like 218,000.
Right.
So that was the remaining of the Anthem fund. So I never considered that there were any further Anthem funds. So that's always been zeroed out of every budget I've presented to you.
Okay. Questions from board members? Mr. Thomas, I can tell through your mask that your eyes, you have a question.
You said you zeroed out the 300,000 Anthem fund, and at the end of 19, there was 526,000 returned. Does that mean it was really
800 and whatever the number was.
it was 50 something because we spent 90 for a bus, so it's 4 and change
Yeah,
left.
there's some entries to the accounting system that weren't made at the end of 19 that showed that 300,000 in a deferred revenue count.
So you're saying at the end, and our accounting, I guess between the two of them, our accounting says that 856,000, I think, was returned unspent in 19.
Correct. Hold on a minute. Let me get to that sheet. I'll tell you. You just got to add 300,000 to the number.
You got it in here somewhere.
557,728 was remaining funds of 19, not including this 300,000 that was in this deferred revenue account marked as Anthem funds. But that's just because that hadn't been journaled entry or accounting entries made at the end of 19, because that money was earned, the money was transferred. The cash was transferred.
So the lump sum was transferred. There weren't separate transfers made. It was a lump sum transfer.
I can't explain how many transfers it was exactly, but the 300,000 went for FY19. Might have gone in quarterly transfers. I can't answer that.
Okay. But there was nothing that delineated it that way going to them.
No, we just do quarterly transfers. So I don't know whether they quarterly transferred that 300,000 or whether they lump summed that 300. I can't answer that. All I can answer with surety is the 300,000 was transferred.
Questions? Others?
And the interim finance director, Dan Bicknornick, is here, can answer these questions in more detail than I can.
Dan, do you want to take a swing at all this so that we're all... And welcome to your first board meeting. I know that you are the interim finance director, and thank you for what you're doing for us, because as you know, it's one of our most important things is to keep track of the book. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here. Again, my name is Dan Van Dornick, interim finance director. To answer your question directly, the general fund contribution to the schools is transferred once a quarter, so in 4 even parts. The $300,000 that's being spoken of from the Anthem funds, that cash was actually transferred when the original Anthem funds was actually received by the county. So it's been in their cash balance since 2016, 2017. So they've had the cash on hand. In 19, they had a $300,000 budget appropriation for these funds. And so it's just a matter of recognizing the revenue, getting it out of deferred revenue and into their revenue and expense statement, which then would have added to their operating surplus.
Yeah, exactly. But it ends up going into their revenue account as a transfer.
What he said at the end was it's operating, and it goes back to part of their operating return.
Right. The $300,000 should have been recognized as revenue, which would have then increased the $500,000 to $800,000 of a net surplus.
Any other questions?
Mr. Kelly, we haven't received anything yet on what plans are for the reversion fund from 19.
Yes, that's their other, that would be a request, their last request in the third little tab in your board packet.
Mr. Seeley?
Mr. Black, go ahead.
I guess maybe, and numbers are more of a Mr. Thomas thing than mine, but my question is, these are 300,000 left over in Anthem funds from 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
That's what they're
Oh,
requesting, but I wouldn't say that it's just 300,000 left over.
but wasn't this from a budget a couple of years ago?
19, FY 19.
Okay. But I guess I guess what, and I guess we'll have to get the schools to answer this, but wasn't that money supposed to go to the teachers for insurance?
It did. So I think they just had a good year and revenues exceeded expenditures by $857,000.
Okay. All right.
So that you could say, well, there's Anthem money left, but it's just money. Just they underspent their budget. They did it's my understanding, that's what they've committed to me, that they did the adjustments, that the insurance was adjusted when the board appropriated the 300,000.
That is confusing now, because he said it came out of the 17 budget, was left over, which means it would have been a reversion fund for the 18, correct?
No,
Which,
the Anthem money, that was what he said was transferred to them years ago, but it wasn't all appropriated. So it wasn't appropriated, they couldn't use it that far back. But we appropriated 300,000 of the Anthem money, and at the time we thought there was about 600,000 left. And I think if you go back and review the video of that, they requested all of it at the time, and the board said, no, we'll give you half of it, and gave them 300,000. It might have been they wanted 450. They wanted some amount more than 300, but the board said, no, we're going to hold on to some for next year. And for 20, we appropriated the last bit of it, which was agreed upon, that all that was left was 218,000 and change, and that was appropriated for 20. So it becomes more of I guess would it be a word issue? County doesn't believe there are any Anthem funds left. Yes, they had 300,000 left over, but that's all part of the 800,000 that would have been left over, the 557,000 plus this 300,000. If you want to call it Anthem funds, you could, but it's dollar bills. They're all just dollar bills of revenue that were left over from 19. Historically, the board has appropriated reversion funds back to capital projects, not ongoing operation expenses. You can certainly, if you so choose, appropriate 300,000. We would not recognize it in our accounting system that it was Anthem funds. It would be 300,000 from the unencumbered fund balance, of which then next year you would end the same issue because it would have to come from somewhere.
It would be recurring if we do this. Right. And that's why we told them it was one-time money. In 19, it was to help with insurance one time. And we rolled forward from there. So, correct, because it would be, it's just capital money is where it would go into the cash reserve for capital projects. And one of our, as Mr. Thomas and I have talked about, we have yet to see the governor's budget for all of revised budget. We know what the budget is, and the revision is apt to catch a lot of us unaware of where they're really going.
and if that's the case, Mr. Chairman, then I would suggest we need to hold until at such time as we have true numbers from the governor's office, because it might be even worse than we think, and we may end up having to go back and take a second look again after his budget comes.
Correct. You're absolutely correct, Mr.
So-
Underwood. Absolutely correct.
And you should know we did rough fuzzy math one day last week, and the impact to the county may be close to 1.5 million.
Okay.
Rough fuzzy math.
Right.
We're hoping that's way worst case.
Right. Okay.
The state's $2 billion short. The state budget, I think, was 77 billion. So
Right.
3% reduction across the board could be kind of tough.
And I just don't think that we're going to escape the sword that's cutting. So I think we need to be prepared.
Everybody's gonna.
And yes, so I think we need to be prepared because we may have to come back and cut again. So I think we should hold at this point until we get the governor's budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Mr. Black, I can't see any more comment. Got him on
None,
mute.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. I guess we can do these A, B, and C and do them one motion at a time.
That would be preferable.
Yeah, it would make looking at all this a lot.
Now, remember in this first resolution, I recommended there's just a minus in their expenditures of 300,000 because I don't know where to take that from, out of their categories. But the bottom line total is $44,796,635. So unless you want to take something,
Do the schools know where they want the 300 to come from?
This time I will have to rework the numbers. If the 300,000 does not come to us, which was not recognized as earned income, and the prior period audit adjustments are completed in order for it to be at fund balance, we will need to raise the insurance for our health insurance to our employees, which will be across all categories, and we will also have to cut 2.5 positions. I believe it has been the goal of all of us, the schools and the county, to not have to cut positions during this event, but we will be required to cut positions if this 300,000 is not recognized. On the 300,000, it was 294,000 was remaining in the budget authority in the health insurance line. The premium rates were adjusted for the employees. If you recall, our budget is processed in October, so we're doing it on the census of the employees in October. The whole year later is when our plan year is, an entire year, and our employees decided to, some employees drop, some employees take different tiers, so it was just a projection. So 294,000 of budget authority and hospitalization remained in FY19. Therefore, I did not earn the revenue to recognize it. So those would be based on the auditors. They do a prior period adjustment to your financial statements and recognize it as fund balance.
But we sent that as one-time money. When we had the budget discussion, we all agreed the Anthem money was one-time money and not to incorporate it as continuing revenue. We had a very long conversation, board to board, about how we were going to do this because we knew it was the dwindling funds of Anthem, and everybody agreed they knew it was one-time funds.
Correct.
So when we did our budget, let me finish, we did our budget on the 9th of June. We said we were going to leave the schools level funded, which was at this point in time probably better than some places are going to do. So to say we're going to level fund and then to add 300,000 that was one-time money in 19, we all agreed Anthem money was one-time money, and there was no Anthem money transferred from our budget to yours. It was just cash.
Correct.
So what we needed from you all was a statement telling us in the 7 broad categories, which is typically what we do, and that's what this meeting was for 7 broad categories, and the funds that should be allocated to those categories. Because you're now on the 23rd of June, you need a budget, and what you sent us back was a budget with an additional 300,000 in it that we can't put in there right now. It was one-time funds, and if we put it, we play this game that next year it's going to have to go in again. Next year it's got to, and the whole board at our June 9th meeting said we weren't going to do that.
And we did level fund our budget. We have level funded the budget after the February 10th presentation to the Board of Supervisors. The 300,000 was included in the other revenues as it was in the presentation to the Board of Supervisors. It was removed by the county administrator. It is not part of county local transfer. That was level funded in our budget. It is other revenues, and that is the amount that we have it in. Anthem has always been included in that other revenues, and
Okay.
that is the fund.
Okay, we get it. We get it. I'll take a motion.
Can I ask her one quick question?
Mr. Thomas?
You have in your budget that your insurance went up 9.6%.
Correct, sir.
Do we have a dollar figure what that is?
I would have to pull it, but yes, we do have a dollar figure. I don't have it off the top of my head. It was 600 and some $1,000.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ballpark. Okay,
Mhm.
600 something.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The employee portion of that will be 132,000.
I'll just take a motion on agenda item 1A. It sounds like there's more discussion, Mr. Underwood.
Mr. Chairman, I was just talking to my colleague, and what I said was, it's better for us to hold on to the 300,000 at this point in the general fund and see where we are, how things shake out. If we give it to them now and we come up with a deficit,
Cut
then we're going to have to cut something that they've already
budget.
budgeted it for that fund. So if they budget without it right now, it puts us both in a good position. The money's here available if they need it, if we can afford to give it to them. But if they put it in their budget and spend it, it's gone. And we know that there's going to, like I said, there's going to be some numbers coming back that we're not going to like in terms of what the governor's budget looks like. So it would behoove us to take the lead here and just say we're going to hold on. Not saying that it may not be possible. We're going to hold on until we get the governor's budget to see what the impact is going to be. That's my recommendation.
Well, I think on that same note, there has to be something in the budget that they can delay, so this 300,000 doesn't come out right away. I mean, we don't want to lose positions, but in a $50 million budget, there ought to be 300,000 that hopefully they can delay some sort of way. You know, to give us that time till August without laying off people.
Yeah, because I think it's going to be at least August before they get enough forecast revenue numbers to actually tell us what they're going to have to do to the budget to write it.
Mr. Seeley?
Mr. Black.
And I want to piggyback off what Mr. Underwood was saying. There's nothing, you've been on the school board for a while. There's nothing with that extra money that is the reversion money. There's nothing stopping the county from, if we get a better forecast from the state, there's nothing stopping us from going back and taking a look at the budget, the school budget, in another month or two, correct?
Correct. We're saying,
yeah, right.
That's what
So
August is.
Yeah, right. So we get the numbers in August, then we have the $700,000 in hands. We can come to the table with them and say this is a recommendation. We can sit down and have that meeting that they want, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'm just double and triple checking. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Because there are cuts coming. Don't know where they're going to be and don't know how much they're going to be because nobody really has the new revenue numbers from the governor. I need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we hold on to the 300,000 until at which time we get the governor's numbers and determine if we can give it back to schools where that money will go. But put it back, leave it in the general fund at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say because that's B, Mr.
B.
Underwood. So we're going to get there. You're a little ahead of me.
All right.
I need
So,
the adoption of a budget.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we adopt the fiscal 2021 Caroline County School budget and appropriations by categories.
I guess we need the resolution number.
Right, and the one I prepared has got a $300,000 negative in it, because I don't know what category to take that out of.
So let me ask this. How do we approve a budget by category if we don't know how much goes in each category?
I've never done it before.
So let me ask you this. You looked at, we talked about in round terms where we could actually make cuts and then they could come back to us to recategorize.
Correct.
So we could actually do that. They could come back with their adjustment because we've got to give them categories tonight because they have to have a budget 1 July. Well, I think, Mr. Cully, do you have something along those lines?
you could, I mean, I'm not recommending one way or the other, but you could take 150,000 out of administration, attendance, and health, and 150 out of operation and maintenance, and let them come back and adjust it in July with the way they want it to look. And they would have an adopted budget at $44,796,635.
I think
You could take attendance, administration, attendance, and health to $1,703,357. Take operations and maintenance to $3,665,551. That would wash out the $300,000. It's not how I'm sure they want it to look, but they could then at least come back and we can amend it once the school board's adopted the new categories. So it'd be temporary. But it would then total up to $44,796,635, which is what's on your sheet. Your sheet that I printed and it's in the board packet's got a $300,000 minus. That doesn't change.
So, Mr. Chairman, that would be the motion then, that we appropriate the
All right.
635.
She asked, could I pull it out of instruction, since that's the largest one? It would be the least percentage cut.
But they could come back and make that, I mean, this is a temporary, they can come back with it, because we're gonna have to come back anyways, no matter what we do tonight. My suspicion is,
Well, if it washes across all the categories, they'll have to.
right. Let's do it, let's let them come back. Mr. Underwood, you have a motion?
Again, my motion is to appropriate adoption of the fiscal year 2021 Caroline County School budget of $44,796,635.
Modified. R1320 modified, correct?
Correct.
20 modified.
With the two numbers I listed.
With the two, yeah, with the, turn your mic on, Mr. Underwood.
150,000 from administration, attendance, and health, and 150,000 from the operations and maintenance.
Right, and the total budget then becomes all expenditures of $49,581,486, which includes their special fund, textbook fund, and cafeteria fund. None of that didn't change, other than we washed out
right.
$300,000.
Right. Okay, I got a motion. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
And just so we're clear, the school board at any point in time can come back to the Board of Supervisors with revised categories, and we would adopt the revised categories based on the same numbers.
Based on the same numbers.
Correct, or more money if it's so choose at that time.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
It doesn't have to be what they're going to.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. 1B, the request for supplemental appropriation of Anthem funds. Correct.
You already technically had a motion on that, but sort of.
Yeah, but I never got it. I was going to hold that off. But Mr.
Go
Thomas,
back to this motion.
Mr. Underwood, do you want to remake your Anthem motion? That we were going to hold. See, it's not really Anthem funds. It's just revenue. Turn your mic on.
Right, he said there are, it's not Anthem revenue now, it's just regular, it's just money, basically.
Reverted back.
So I'm not
They
gonna make
didn't
a
spend
motion
it all
regarding-
but they didn't spend it all in insurance, as she explained. But
Right.
it still reverts back.
Right, so it's really not Anthem money, so there really should not be a resolution for appropriation of Anthem funds. If anything, it should be just
300,000.
300,000.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we hold the $300,000 left over from, that
2019.
2019, school board budget pending the governor's,
Revised. budget.
revised budget to the county.
Well, Governor and General Assembly, I would assume.
General, yeah.
Yeah, because the General Assembly's got to approve it before we can even act on it. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second from Mr. Thomas. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Was that an aye, Mr. Black? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, would we have needed to make it an agenda change and it's not Anthem, just to be correct? Since we have it listed on the agenda as Anthem Fund, but technically it's not. Just to
Yeah,
make
that
sure
was their request. Was it Anthem funds? I think it was, we determined that we didn't agree
Okay.
that there were Anthem funds
I
remaining.
didn't say Anthem, so I'm good. Okay. I'm good with that.
Well, we basically took care of these two items when we
And
adopted the
right.
budget.
Yeah, but they're still,
They're still there.
and they're still there. And we've already said that we're not going to do anything with any reversion funds until we get a new General Assembly approved budget so that we know what we're working with. So we can, just to put this to rest, I just like a motion that we're going to hold funds until we get a new revised General Assembly budget for 2021.
That's item C. For item
C.
C. Just did C.
Right,
Correct.
this is for
Mr.
C.
Sid. This is for the remaining 19 funds that was listed in the CAPR as 557,000, of which we've already agreed to appropriate 89,382 for the bus that was run into right after school started last year in the summer. And we only got $7,000 for it and had to buy a new one.
How does the requirement for 294,000 be spent on one time?
The General Assembly in this session took lottery funds. Lottery funds, when you go way back when the lottery was approved by voter referendum, I mean, years and years ago, it was for school construction. And for many years, it was put in the school budgets from the state as school construction funds. And there actually were general fund dollars of the state that were put in school construction as well, that localities used to pay debt service on schools. Somewhere, probably in the downturn of 2008-9, the state sort of did away with that lottery construction part of it, and it just started rolling over into per pupil amount lottery funds. Somewhere this General Assembly decided, wait a minute, the voters approved that this should go to, when it was done for school construction. So this year, of the amount they get, 30% can't just go into raises and retirement or pencils or whatever. It's got to go into school capital. So it definitely it's a minus. Not talking the 300 they just asked for. They are now minus another 294 that last year in this current budget they would have had to spend on salaries and teacher positions or bus drivers or whatever they want. Now they specifically got to spend it on a capital project to get it from the state. And next year it's going to 40%, 30% this year, 40 next year.
Is it capital in the respect that, I mean, it's the way it's detailed here, and if I read it correctly, I missed this page entirely when I was looking at my packet, so I just read it briefly without glasses. But if they want to repair a bathroom, or that would be suitable to use on these.
Yeah, I would consider that. It doesn't have to be like they're building a building because it's not enough money. So yeah, any
Right.
type of.
When you say capital, I was thinking of our. That was me. Of our definition of $50,000 more.
Yeah, that doesn't. I don't think so, but that's more of a question for the schools of what they could spend it on. But I would assume maintenance things, piece of new roof or replacement of things that are
Ceiling.
Yeah,
the parking lot.
Yeah, pay somebody to paint or any of those things. But that's a school question.
Maybe she can add some clarity because that hinges on where I want to go with this.
Since we have multiple restrooms and stuff as our daily grind of repairing them, that is not considered the infrastructure funds. It states that it's non-recurring, so it would be your long-term capital projects, non-recurring operational and infrastructure needs.
I mean, if you were going to renovate a bathroom, I would
A total
Consider-
renovation, yes. If we're
Okay.
gonna repair a part on a bullet or something, no, sir.
Right. Okay.
Do buses count? Do buses count? They're non-recurring.
They're currently recurring in our budget that we're doing 5 buses each year.
But that's
So I
5
think
different buses. It's not the same 5 buses. So it is non-recurring.
it's still recurring because we're doing the 5. Now, if we did 6 or 7 in 1 year, then it would be non-recurring.
So if we cut it to 2 right now and say we're not doing 2 buses, and then in August we're saying we're doing 6, that's non-recurring.
Or if they could fix something that then was broken, it's not in the capital. It's a $40,000 air handler that needs to be replaced or something like that. That's something they could do.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
but
we did.
$290-some-thousand worth of something they can do is a stretch. That's why I said buses, because that's $550,000 in the CIP.
So we did put the 294 in our budget without having the one-time funding, so we had to cut other areas in order to do so, in order to meet that
But
guideline.
the way you're reading this, Mr. Kelly, the way you are reading this is they're going to need 294 anyway. Is that
They're going to get 294 anyway, because our CIP's got more than 294 in it.
What the state's done to them is taken 294 that they have available this year that they're paying salaries with and doing stuff and forcing them to use it on some sort of capital that they probably didn't budget to do capital with. So there is a $294,000 hole in their budget for this money. They did get an increase in state funds. If you go back over what we just approved, there is an increase in state funds. But that increase isn't as large due to the fact that they've taken 30% of this lottery money, which is a small piece of their budget in state funds, and said you've got to spend it on these type of things, where before they had the flexibility to spend it on whatever they wanted.
So the fire alarm at $100,000 would have been a CIP thing.
Yeah, that would be.
Mr. Cully, how much additional state funds did the schools get this year?
You're going to require me to find a budget.
And I didn't bring mine in
It
either.
was like $1 million, and they said 900-some thousand was identified.
For operational state revenues, we have 1.1 million. 988,000 had increased expenditures related to that $1.1 million.
Now it's a bad move to move that money for the fire alarm,
Yeah,
because we could have made that part of this budget.
right.
But that doesn't matter. They got $100,000 for maintenance department, student transport vehicles, $500,000 for buses, computers. Computers 25, class 25.
I'm not sure that's one.
50.
Can you buy computers?
I don't have a total number here in front of me. It just lists the school project. But I mean, there's 294 things. 200.
Yeah, computers you can't.
No?
They're consumables, actually.
Well, in that case,
Yeah, the last 5 years you're lucky.
the only thing on the list here is buses.
I have a question for Marcia.
Martha,
Marcia, did you say that capital improvement funds could be used for operational expenditures?
That infrastructure is one-time operational and infrastructure funds is what they're calling it.
Oh, so they're together, not two
Yeah,
different
they're not
categories?
separated.
Okay.
No, ma'am. So they are in the facilities budget.
All right, thank you.
But
And we do have the CIP. Mr. Thomas is referring to the CIP budget. That is not actually appropriated to
They were
us,
funded mandates.
so we
You
can't count it at
might-
this time. Yes, we did discuss that with Mr. Cully previously as an option. Should the CIP projects be appropriated over to us, it would count towards on the ASR, as well as being able to fund some of these one-time expenditures.
But our dilemma is we're using capital funds on our side as well.
You're using one-time money from the detention center that may not necessarily be there next year. While that's a good plan and would get them out of the hole this year, you're building in that 30% that you've got to maintain for next year, plus an extra 10% they're going to get hit. So I'm not opposed to that, but it's the same one-time argument because their capital goes up and down each year that's in their CIP budget. the one constant, we buy the buses, but the increase there is only whatever the bus goes up per bus. So $2,000 per bus, it goes up $10,000. The 500 we have every year with just the increased percentage of cost of buses going up. So you could certainly do that, and they've requested that, to be given that budget authority to spend, the fire alarm and that stuff, which would solve this problem this year. But
Yeah, we appropriated
Yeah,
that
you already
into this year's
appropriated that
budget.
in this
That's
one.
already done.
it's already transferred. But I don't know whether that stayed in their CIP, which then we control it and they turn over the receipts to us.
So the fire alarm was able to get under contract the following day. They may not substantially complete the work, which will be the goal. If it's not substantially completed, they will definitely not complete it for both facilities. Then it will roll over, since it's CIP, into the next year for the expense to match revenues to expenditures. So it will not be until it's substantially completed. But we had to have the appropriation in order to proceed with the contract.
Right.
And the big number is 856,000.
Well, we've committed 89,000 of that already. They bought a bus. They have it.
But our bigger dilemma is this is going to be a recurring number that grows. And that's the real problem for us, in that we don't know. And for us, this is going to be a broader problem, in that we're probably going to see comp board salaries reduced. Mr. Thomas and I talked about all the categories that could be cut, because we went through this in 2009, Mr. Thomas, where they cut, and we actually were writing checks to the state so that they didn't cut the comp board, schools, and other places where they could cut dollars from, rather than lose them and trying to plug all those holes. We said, what's our total cut amount? And we wrote that check annually, so that we didn't have to try to fish this back into all the different budgets.
I get a word.
So we're probably looking at something comparable again. To the percentage, we don't know, because again, this is going to span 2 budget years. If they fall short, I don't know how they plug the budget hole for 2019-20, and then you got 2021. So if there's a deficit, I don't know how creative the General Assembly. Mr. Thomas and I talked at length about this, and also with Mr. Colley, trying to come up with some creative ideas on how we could actually keep everything on one playing field. And right now, the best plan that we can come up with is keep all the cash that we can and use that to plug those holes. And again, that'll be one-time money. So if we go past a year, we're going to have a different problem when we get to the budget year next year. If we took, as Mr. Thomas said, a $1.5 million cut across the board, if we plug that, what do we do in 2022 or 2021-22 budget when we don't have those dollars left, because they were all one-time monies that we used to plug the hole? How do we then move forward? And then where do all the cuts come from? Do we go across? I mean, then you'd be looking across all of the departments, because comp board salaries go to the Commissioner of Revenue, the Treasurer, Clerk of the Court, the Sheriff's Office. You'd be looking at all of those in terms of, and probably schools, because they would probably take a hit on the other side of that as well. So we're trying to look at this, though it looks like we're looking at one thing right now, we're looking at comprehensively, how does this affect all of our departments and all of our services that we provide, and how do we then accommodate those cuts? Because, I mean, rest assured, there's a $2 billion shortfall. The General Assembly doesn't have $2 billion in any account to cover that. So they're going to look at everything across the board to actually figure out how we're going to, what they'll do to localities and what they'll actually have to plug for keeping those folks. And we won't know that. August may be a little early. That's probably the beginning of when we'll know. it may actually be September, because I think they're trying to look for revenue growth in a couple of months consecutive to see what the trend is, so that they can look at what they'd have to cut long term in the budget. What I don't want to see is them wait till December to do this, because we're halfway through our budget year and the pain will be much greater then than it would be early in the budget, when you could look at a 2 or a 3% cut and forecast out where you might be. But it's not just a schools cut. It's an across the board cut. Right now we're looking at schools because that's the categories we've got to fund today. We looked at level funding and keeping their actual funds that they've come in under their budget. And they did, when we're looking for $194,000, you came in $850,000 under your budget.
19.
So it's not like there isn't money in the budget somewhere to look for $194,000. We think we can work with you on the fire alarms. That's $100,000, as Mr. Thomas said, if you come in at the full $100,000 for the fire alarms. But we're looking comprehensively at all of the services that we provide and all of the cuts that we'd have to absorb. And schools is just one of those departments.
Can I add one thing real quick? Marcia said she's not confident you couldn't use that match on debt service. However, they don't get the debt. They don't pay the debt service. We do. It's never transferred to them.
I'll be happy to give them $25 million worth of debt service if they'd like to take it.
Maybe to get our per pupil numbers up.
I don't think the state ever looks at it in that ASR report.
But if that's an option, we could appropriate debt service funds to the school
Somehow, but anyway.
Well, let's
That's a
look
more
at that. I mean,
complicated
let's
problem.
look at that between now and the time we meet, because we need to figure out where to find this money.
We will.
The way I'm looking at it is we're getting ready to finish a year where there will likely be more reversion funds coming back, and we're looking at 19 funds right now, which there's roughly $750,000. If we allocate the 194, they can. We're still holding over $500,000 in reserve, but they can also get things fixed, which is also one of the things that we as a group have complained about. Things aren't being maintained. Now they underspent their budget. To not give it back to them in some capacity is almost like we're punishing them from being diligent about their budget. And that's not what we want. That's not the message, the overall message that I would want to send out to any department. But if there's something we can do, all right, hey, summertime is when all the work gets done in schools anyway. And we can let them start writing some checks right now and get some things fixed that we all know need to be fixed. Maybe they have a list of things that aren't funded, but again, keeping $500,000 back in reserve, I'm okay with that. Giving them a couple $100,000, I'm okay with that. Personally, yeah, I'm only one of 6. Those are my thoughts.
Well, I was looking at the actual budget presentation we had in May, and those numbers and things that I was recalling were their capital improvement program. So there wasn't anything in there to like be fixed.
Well,
that
that's
was in the program.
Fitting our criteria that we've set for them. It's $50,000 or more.
Right, got to be 50,000.
And sealing a parking lot for, I'll just use Lewis and Clark. They're growing grass in the parking lot in Lewis and Clark. It needs to be sealed. It's 11, 12 years old. It's probably going to cost $15,000 to do it. It's not a CIP item.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying what I read to try to find that 190 was from their CIP, and nothing was working. I was just throwing stuff to make sure we could give a couple of things to stick to cover it.
Yeah.
A long one. I mean, yeah, because we've had an agreement board to board that any reversion funds would be used for capital projects. Because if we put this back in their budget, you're adding to their budget that the next year is an automatic increase, and that's what I'm trying to say is that level funding. We're not saying they're not going to get the money, but if they get a cut, let's say they get an $800,000 cut, that when you put that in, as Mr. Underwood just said, you're looking for $1.6 million the year after.
But we still have time to actually put this 194 back in, even if it's when we meet in August. Because if when we meet in August,
By that point.
but the school CIP projects don't. There's nothing in here. That's what I'm saying.
But what I'm saying is that
Let them find something.
no, that you wouldn't see the $15,000 projects that they all know need to get done.
Well,
We
if
would
they
never
got-
see it.
If they got some $15,000 projects, we need to know what they are, and we'll do 10 or 15 of those to get to the 194.
And that might be the next natural progression of this conversation. It's like, all right,
And I don't know if that's something we can fix right now. That's all I'm saying. But I'm all for trying to find the 194 anyway.
Right, see that's just gives credence to the argument that if we hold it and we're able to give it back to them, then we're not at a loss and they're not at a loss. They can continue. But should we give them the funds, make those funds available, and the numbers don't look favorable to us, that only increases the budget for next year.
the reversion funds haven't increased. And the way I'm looking at this, and maybe I'm understanding it incorrectly, is that these will be one-time expenditures, not recurring operational funds.
No. The state is cutting them $294,000 this year that they must use for capital projects. They're giving them the money, but they're segmenting it off.
Yeah, you're
So if
saying
you give them the 194, that's 194 is going in operations, salaries, health insurance.
So you're saying it a little different. The state is giving them
The full amount.
they're giving them $294,000 that they would normally use for salaries, but now they have to use that $294,000 because the state says on one-time capital projects.
Non-reoccurring.
So they basically lose that 294 in one category and put it over here in another category, which they really didn't want to have anything to do with. So and it'll go up next year to
40%.
40%.
Okay, it's 30 now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fuzzy math. It'll be 400,000 next year.
So it does become ongoing.
But it is. I mean, it is still something that I'm saying. School buses. There's nothing in here worth 194,000 that you had in your original list. But
No, we didn't have
I
that much
think
money.
we're belaboring the point because
But we're chasing, to be clear, that number is coming out of their operations budget, and when we put it in,
That's where it's going.
it's going into operations and it's reoccurring. And for them it's one-time funds. And that's the dilemma, is that the formula changed, and you at some point in time have to normalize yourself around the funding change. It's just like a pay cut, and they essentially, at this point, they've got a category change, which means they've got money for capital projects, but we don't have what they consider capital projects that qualify for the state. But in any event, we're replacing operation funds. It's a dollar for dollar change.
Okay,
This year it's 294.
I'm going to make a motion that we delay item number 6.
Six, you mean?
I mean C.
One,
until the boards meet again in August, and hopefully with the help of the school board, we can figure out some things that could be, or some things that could qualify for the capital project, whether it's school buses or whether it's their debt service or something, and then that 294 would be freed up in their own budget. So
Can I ask for a friendly amendment? The previous motion was
As friendly as I
after,
am.
is after the General Assembly, the governor and the General Assembly, because that may not be August. So if you set an arbitrary date, that we may not know anything.
I will substitute August for after the General Assembly gives us the final revised budget. So that's my motion, Mr. Chair. If there's a second.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Black.
my video feed went out, so I did not hear what the motion was.
The motion is to defer 1C and those funds until we have a ratified, revised General Assembly budget.
Thank you.
Which we hope will be in August.
That's our hope.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
This discussion is, and we're going to ask the help of the school board that they figure out if capital project or debt service and or school buses could count on that capital project. And if that's the case, we can appropriate some of the school bus money that we spend to them so they can spend it. And then we comply with the rules.
We already appropriate that to them.
Just remember that that is also one-time funds from the detention center. So we're
Not school bus. Not school bus.
Not school bus? Okay. I just don't want to
Okay.
exchange one time for one time.
Just to make sure we're all working towards that goal.
Right.
That's all
Yeah,
I'm
school
saying.
buses
Okay.
we fund out of the general fund. This is general fund transfer.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Agenda item number 2.
This one should be pretty straightforward. We have to do a OBIT study that goes, it's included in the audit every year. And it's been a number of years since we've done one, which is basically all of our benefits. And there's a company that does that, Milliman. We do have the money that was in the FY21 budget in finance to cover outside additional audit help that I'm hoping I'm not going to need this year with the change in finance directors. We do have the money in the 21 budget to support this, and we do have to have it for the audit.
So moved.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 3.
Mr. Chairman, we met last night as the broadband committee, and we are going to submit a letter of intent, which is due on the 14th of July, 13th of July, which is the day before the board meets again. So the letter of intent will go in between that time. We are going to decide among the several projects we have, which one we think would be more likely to be approved. So that project goes in August. So we're just sending in the letter of intent. If that's the board desire, would we not like to get some money from the state for broadband expansion? So that's
I
where
had
we're gonna.
one question when I read this. So project 1 is both of those, or is it one or the other
It's
of
both
those?
of those. Project 1 is both of those.
Okay.
I don't really want to. We don't really want to discuss our hand now, do we?
Well, it's on the website.
The other options we have for the project.
No,
We do want to do either project 1, which is Ladysmith Road, Balti Road, Panola Road, or project 2, which is 17 Port Royal up and down Portabago Bay and up to Rappahannock Academy. We do want to submit a batty grant for one of those 2 projects.
Okay.
That's all we're saying, and the only thing we need today.
When do we have to approve funding?
We don't have to approve funding until we get the grant.
You got to commit to
We got
the
to
funding.
commit. Yeah, once we commit to a project in August
So
when we do that.
That's 1,200 a pass. 1,200 per pass. Which is a
per
house
person business connection.
Right.
Per connection.
So if we do this tonight, are we approving the dollars that go with it?
No, we're just saying we intend to submit a grant. Now we could always say, well, we intended to, but we didn't.
Doesn't that blow up the whole application?
You see what I'm saying? Yeah,
We're part of a regional application. I think if you were to back out, after that fact, that the rest of the region would go, the whole application would go down. Remember, we're not applying by ourselves.
We're one of four counties that are part of this project through Atlantic Broadband.
Yes, I
But
think
approving this approves the dollars that go with it.
that's what we're asking for.
Well, that wasn't my understanding of what we had before. Was that your understanding, Dave?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Black?
we need to move forward with one of these two. We have lost out on so much money in the last couple of years from the state. If you go to one of the BACO conferences, it's time to stop losing out on some of this money and start putting one of these projects down so we can get something going on.
So I think,
Mrs. Long?
I think he's saying yes, but go ahead.
I certainly approve this, and of course, I'm going to push for project number 2, and not simply because it's in my district, but because Atlantic Broadband has already shown interest in that area, so I think they'll be a lot more motivated. It was probably 3 years ago, Scott Moser was there because it was at their HOA. They had Atlantic Broadband president, I think it was president there, asking him. And he said, it's just not feasible. It's too long a stretch. Well, now we have a program that'll cover that stretch. Portabago is going through a change. It's now where it used to be a lot of single and older families there. There are school children there. There are professionals that work from home, especially this past year. There are seniors who would like to communicate with their doctors. They don't have that, and we're so isolated because even for our students to get in their parents' car after the parents get home from work and go up to the school parking lot to do homework, it's a half-hour drive both ways for them. Right. We also have lots of commercial working farms. I talked to Johnny Davis, who used to be a state corn president of the Corn Association.
But
all
Nancy,
equipment.
That's the discussion that you and I are going to have after we get past this.
Okay.
She's
But
saying,
anyhow,
yes, we
when
want to
we
submit
get-
the letter of
Well,
intent.
but
When
it
the
sounds
committee
like,
gets to this and decides, I'm just saying, I'd like
Right.
you very strongly to consider project number 2.
let me be clear, do we get to submit both and pick one later, or is this
No.
No, we're just
No.
doing a letter of intent now. We
No.
just want to say we want to be part of this program, and I think one is 180 and one is 2 something. So that's the dollar
well,
number.
one
you're
is
talking
two,
about.
one is two, like 220, and one is 139 or 139.
We can decide at a later date, but not too late. There needs to be
No.
time for Atlantic Broadband to take this to their corporate board and get them to sign off on whichever leg of this the board chooses, or if the board wants to allow the broadband committee to choose this, staff doesn't have an issue. We need an intent that's basically a binding intent to Atlantic Broadband. We're going to put in $1,200 a pass per whichever one of these we choose to do.
Well,
Because
it's
we're going-
217 for option 1, and it's 139 for option 2. Just
That's what we're talking
Option
about.
1 covers more houses. They're both
no,
the
I
same.
no,
they're both the
it
same
covers.
number.
Option 2 just covers a lot of miles. Option
Right.
1 covers fewer miles, following more homes.
For more
No, I
So really, we just want to say yes. We're going to be part.
We're going to do one or the other, and whatever one we pick, we're on the hook for. If we get the grant, we're going to spend that money. That's what you're voting on.
Although I will say with project number 2, and I'll just prepare since it is by house, I think Atlantic Broadband's numbers are off a little bit because there's some new construction.
Nancy,
new
we're going to
homes.
give you plenty of time to work on that project. Okay?
All right. You know it's not going to be the last word of my life.
But what we need right now, and I'm going to make a
I'm
motion
just
that we
making
submit the
sure
letter of
everybody
intent.
understands we're committing to the
Yeah.
dollars. That's all.
And
That's
we
all
need
I
to.
want.
We need to. So I'm going to make a motion that we go ahead and approve the letter of intent for the VATI grant with Atlantic Broadband.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Black.
when is this, I mean, once again, when does this have to be, the final say have to be in? Because once again, I'm afraid of losing this money. I mean, we always say we're going to do something, and then it's too late. I would really like to know when that's going to happen.
Broadband's going to meet again the 13th?
No, 6.
6th. We're going to meet the 6th, which is in 2 weeks. We're gonna come up with some data to give to the board. Mr. Sadler's trying to figure out number of students. Well, okay, we're just gonna throw it out here.
Well, we're working on all that. The key answer to his question is, you're going to meet on the 6th. We need to give the data on the 7th to Atlantic Broadband
Right.
so they can take it to their board, get approval. Somebody's got to write the grant, which we haven't got that totally worked out. We think we do. for the region, and it's all got to be in by the 13th.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the other option is if we can get a partnership with the schools and the county, we could possibly do one of these projects with COVID money.
No, and
Because that's what I said that we want to discuss it, but we might as well know that there's a slim chance we can do both of these projects and basically hit a home run.
right.
So we're saying
You've got a motion and a second.
call a question.
I'm just waiting for you to finish your discussion.
I was done with let's go.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. Agenda item number 4.
This is one that we've typically waited a little bit longer on, but we've found out that we're unable to, if we wait for financing and then get the financing and then issue the PO for sheriff's vehicles, we have a hard time getting them. They canceled the PO on us last year, and so we're just asking for authorization to go for financing. Rates are low right now. We're going to structure this financing so you can pick and choose what you want to do on any of these individual projects. But I think all this was approved in the capital. It's not a major expense. All the capital was about $179,000, including the infrastructure project. So this is a smaller piece because I'm not talking about the infrastructure projects. I'm only talking about vehicles. And so we can bring that all back, and July 14th, you can decide which ones you want to do. You'll know what the costs are. You know what your yearly costs are, so we can show you how that fits in the budget each year, and then we can issue that PO.
Do you think you'll have this back by our first meeting in July?
I might. I hope. If not, it'll move to the August meeting. Depends on what Davenport can do.
Okay.
We turn this over to Davenport for them to work on.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we authorize staff to issue the RFP as stated in our agenda.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Ayes have it. Appropriation for fiscal year 2019, 2020. And I understand this is a formality that we have missed in the past.
Well, last year was the first year where I used money out of the detention center fund to go to school CIP in FY20 and the county CIP FY20, and it just didn't get created in the appropriation resolution. So we haven't spent all this, nor do I think we will, but we do need to make all this so it'll be correct for the audit.
Move for the adoption.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Mr. Seeley,
Oh.
Mr. Seeley.
Mr. Black?
Further discussion. On this, I'd like to bring this up at the when we have the 2-on-2 or the joint meeting with schools. I'd like to have this on the agenda. The CIP money that's coming out of this, the detention center.
As a one-time sort of avenue? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. But I'd like to, if we're getting that kind of revenue, I'd like to discuss, our share, their share, so forth. So I'd like that on the agenda for when we meet with them.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Agenda item number 6. This is just a ratification of something we've already all knew about.
Make a motion that we approve the
Well, I did have one extra question in
and to
that.
go along with the state and to go along with the state.
Go along with the governor, I mean, because there was some confusion that we just follow whatever goes on, even among employees. We don't follow what the governor does. We only have the state codified holidays. And so we always bring back whatever the governor does. And normally he does it in time enough fashion that we get it in front of you. This happened Wednesday, the holiday, or Tuesday, or whatever day, and the holiday was Friday. We really had to poll the board to get it done. Would you like to include governor holidays in the personnel policy? That's the only part I'm asking. If you don't, it doesn't bother me one way or the other. There was some confusion, and
Do we have to really make that decision
you
tonight?
do not.
Can we just table that and let's move on with this, and we'll come back to governor holidays at another, because that's not going to happen again until Christmas probably.
Yeah, it does in the fall. Normally,
Right.
every governor always puts something out in the fall.
Right. All right, so agenda item number 6, this is sort of post.
6 was Juneteenth, we did. You want 7 now?
What do you need?
Well, we didn't vote on, did we vote? We didn't vote on 6.
Do we need to?
Yeah, I made the motion. didn't I?
Okay.
I didn't write it down, but okay.
Second.
That,
First ratifies
That's what I said.
holiday.
We didn't really vote. We just sort of talked about it.
And you want just number one, not both.
Okay,
of them.
right,
One.
right. I thought I made the motion that we approved Juneteenth as a holiday following the governor's thing and Mr. Cully.
You ought to ratify the holiday or the county administrator's action in declaring the holiday
No, I don't.
this one time.
I don't want to do what the lawyer says. I want to do what I say.
Well, I'd like to take his advice. Let's just ratify the holiday,
Yeah,
post-holiday.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion for that?
That was it.
Mr. Thomas, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mrs. Long. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And number 7 is just information, I take it, so we will talk about this.
Yes, I wanted you to have this so you could look at it, make changes, additions, and
Resolution.
solutions.
Yes, sir. Yeah, no motion needed on 7.
That's for our next board meeting.
Right. And the amendment to the agenda was a resolution for Mr. Henry S. Quash for a formal resolution to honor his voluntary service to fire and rescue. Do I have a motion? Mr.
Motion.
Underwood? And second, Mr. Thomas? I have a motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Ooh, I had a green one right here.
Okay.
I didn't even see I had my own bowl. I'm sorry. Thanks, Pam.
Yeah. And I signed it. Closing board comments? Hearing none, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Seeley,
Mr. Black?
I do have a couple things that I want to reiterate. Number one, the George Washington Regional Commission did form a internet broadband committee that would look at things from take the individual recommendations from the jurisdictions in GWRC to kind of, so we need, basically what I'm saying is we need I would imagine our next meeting, we're going to want to vote on a member from Board of Supervisors that would be a member of that committee. Okay.
Okay.
We need to have a discussion on that. I just think it would be good because that committee is formed and that money's out there now, so we need to act on it. The second thing is I reiterated in my opening board comments. I think one of the things sometimes that we need to get out to the public, and if we can ask Mr. Cully to write something or a staff member write something what came out of this meeting in regards to the schools, so that can be put on our website, so that way there can be a clear understanding of where that money stands now and why we voted the way we did tonight.
Okay.
That's it.
I had a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. We are done.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Ben?